Hi everyone and welcome or welcome back to my channel. So it's that time of year again. It's time to do the mid-year book tag, which is a tag that I think I've done every year on my channel since I started back in 2020. I might have missed the first year, but I've done this tag several times already, and it's a tag that I really enjoy making because all of the questions are related to how your year has gone so far reading wise, and I find it really fun to reflect on all of the books that I've read so far in the year, including my favourites, my disappointments, and everything in between. So I'm gonna get stuck into the questions. I will leave the questions in the description with timestamps just in case you wanted to skip around. I'll also see if I can find the original creators' videos. This tag was originally created by Ellie and Chami. I know this tag has been around for a while, but if I can find their original videos, then I will leave those in the description as well. But yeah, I'm gonna get stuck into question number one, which is, what is the best book that you've read so far this year? Usually I really struggle to answer this question because usually I have like 3 to 5 favourite books at this point that I want to talk about, but I have actually managed to choose just one book for this answer, which I'm really proud of myself for. So my favourite book that I've read so far this year is The Travelling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arakawa. This is translated fiction, so it was originally published in Japanese, and I'd had it on my Kindle for ages, but I finally read it a few months ago and I loved it. I loved the balance of humour and emotion. So this is basically about a young man who needs to rehome his cat. So he's travelling around the country visiting family and friends, trying to find someone who can take in his cat. And you do get the cat's perspective, which I really loved because the cat was just so sassy and sarcastic, and they sounded exactly how you would expect a cat to sound. It made me laugh at times, but it also made me cry harder than any book has made me cry this year. I was literally sobbing so hard that I couldn't see my Kindle screen to finish the book. So I had to pause and take a breather before I could continue. And whenever a book makes me feel that emotionally invested, then you know it's going to get 5 stars. And yeah, this is my favourite book of the year so far. I will talk about a few more favourites as we go through the video, but question number 2 is, what is the best sequel that you've read so far this year? Now for this, I have actually chosen 2 books because I couldn't decide between Fool's Errand and The Last Argument of Kings. So Fool's Errand is technically a sequel because it's book 7 in the Realm of the Outlandings, but it's also the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, so I weren't sure if it was cheating choosing this book, but this is another book that made me cry. I was actually driving while I was listening to the audiobook for this, and it was hard to keep myself together and concentrate on driving. So yeah, this is one of my favourite sequels that I've read so far this year. And then I also really enjoyed Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie, which is the 3rd book in the First Law trilogy. I read this entire series a few months ago, and I do have a spoiler-free reading vlog for it. If you want to check it out, I'll leave it linked in the cards and in the description. But I really liked this series. I think the reason I liked the 3rd book the most is because this trilogy felt like one long book that was split into parts. So the first 2 books felt a little underwhelming, only because I didn't understand what was going on. And the way that Joe Abercrombie writes is that he wants you to experience things as the characters are experiencing things. So you know about as much as the characters know, and it was really frustrating at times, especially in the 2nd book, where the characters were doing stuff and they didn't know why they were doing it. They didn't know why they were going certain places, and they didn't think to ask, and it was so frustrating to read. I loved Glocta in this series one of my favourite fictional characters ever written, and I especially loved the chronic pain rep as someone who has chronic pain, and while this was very slow, I did think it was worth it in the end, and I really liked the way that things wrapped up in a satisfying way. Really excited to read more books by Jo Abercrombie. I don't know if I mentioned, but I read this for the Catch Up Book Club, which is a book club that was created by Becca from Becca and the Books, and I do plan on reading the standalones later this year, and then the other trilogy that comes after this, which I think is called Age of Madness. Question number 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. So I've chosen 3 books for this because I wanted to pick a few books across different genres, but a romance that I really want to read soon is The Fiancé Farce by Alexandria Bellefleur. I might actually pick this up in July. I think I can work it into a vlog that I've got planned, but this is a sapphic romance that's a marriage of convenience. I actually bought this recently on my Kindle, and I much prefer the US cover for this. I'll overlay it on the screen so you can see, but it's so much prettier than the UK cover. I don't know why they changed it, but it really annoys me. A thriller that I'm really excited to get to is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. So Taylor Adams is the author of No Exit, which I read back in 2019, I think. I know it was before I started my booktube channel, and it was a really fun thriller. Like, I read it in one afternoon because it was very gripping and I couldn't put it down. I didn't read Hairpin Bridge because I didn't hear the best reviews for that, but so far the reviews that I've heard for The Last Word are pretty positive. I believe this is about a reviewer. I think it's about a woman who leaves a review for a book and the author might or might not be stalking her. It's something like that, so really excited to pick this up, and I'm hoping it has that tension and the atmosphere that I loved in No Exit. I'm also really hoping to get round to In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune, which I understand is a Pinocchio retelling, but it's also set in a world, sorry, I almost dropped my phone then. It's also set in a world where there's robots, I think. I really enjoyed Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, and I liked House in the Cerulean Sea. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as a lot of people did, but I still gave it like a 3 stars, so I'm hoping I enjoy his latest release too. Next question is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of this year? I actually made a video about this quite recently, so I'll leave that linked in the cards and in the description, but I would say my most anticipated release is either Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree or Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake, because these are both kind of sequels to series that I've already loved. I mean, Bookshops and Bone Dust is technically a prequel to Legends and Lattes, which was one of my favourite books of last year, so obviously I'm going to be picking this one up. But I think this is about our main character Viv, who's an orc, and she's been injured in combat and decides to take a vacation in this town where she ends up helping out in a bookshop. Then Iris Kelly Doesn't Date is a companion novel to Delilah Green Doesn't Care and Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, 2 of my favourite books again of last year, and I'm really excited to finally be getting Iris's story because Iris is a side character from the first 2 books and I really liked her. I think this has fake dating, which is one of my favourite tropes, and I think the book starts with Iris having a failure of a one-night stand with a woman who ends up being part of this theatre group when she goes to audition for a role in a play. Very excited either way, and Ashley Herring Blake is an auto-by author for me, so I'm hoping that I'm gonna love this. I'm pretty sure that I will. Next question is, what is your most disappointing book of the year so far? And I almost don't want to hold up this book because the cover is kind of ugly. I mean, it has grown on me, to be fair, over time, but I pretty much had decided I wasn't going to buy this book in hardback, and then I changed my mind because I was going to an event where I was going to be seeing the author, and then I didn't even end wound up queuing to get the book signed. So I do regret buying this, but I don't regret reading it because I loved the first book in this series, but Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo was a disappointment. I gave this 2 stars, which I wasn't expecting considering I gave Ninth House 5 stars. So this is the second book in the Alex Stern series. And yeah, like I said, I gave Ninth House 5 stars. I even reread this to read Hellbent and I still gave it like a 4 stars, and it would have been a 5 stars, but I already knew the outcome of the mystery. Still enjoyed the world, still liked the characters, and I loved how this was about secret societies at Yale and there's a murder mystery that our main character is trying to solve, and there was so much magic and it was really dark in places. I loved this book. However, Hellbent felt very different and it felt almost convenient at times. Like the writing in this felt lazy to me. The main characters were going through a lot of traumatic stuff, but they were barely reacting to what was happening, and I found it really jarring. I haven't decided if I am going to continue with this series. I probably will because there's only one more book to come out, but I'm hoping it comes out quite soon, like next year or the year after, because I don't want to have to reread this book to read the sequel. So yeah, very disappointed with this one, but I still love Ninth House and I think this would have worked really well as a standalone, but unfortunately didn't love this one. Next question is, what is your biggest surprise of the year so far? Again, there were a few different answers that I could give for this question, but the book that I've chosen is The Split by Laura Kay, which I read quite recently and really enjoyed. I'd never read anything by this author before, but I loved this book. I think it's because I could really relate to the main character. So this follows our main character, whose name I can't remember. Ali, I think her name was. I'm gonna look it up because that's gonna annoy me. Yes, the main character's name is Ali, and at the start of the book she goes through a breakup. So she's been with her girlfriend since university and her girlfriend breaks up with her quite suddenly, although you do start to learn that the signs had been there for a while. But Ali is quite upset and she decides to do what anyone would do. She steals the cat and she runs away back to her dad's place in Sheffield, where she spends a lot of time moping around and feeling sorry for herself until her dad very gently suggests that she gets in touch with this guy Jeremy, who's a family friend that Ali used to know when they were teenagers, and Jeremy can kind of relate to what she's going through because the year before his boyfriend broke up with him, so they bond through this shared heartbreak, and it's a story about moving on after a breakup. They decide to sign up for this half marathon and I really enjoyed reading about them training for this race because I'm currently training to do a 10k race in September and I could relate to a lot of the training that they were going through. I'm being careful who I recommend this to because I don't want people to judge me when I say that I can relate to the main character. I could relate to her a lot, especially the kind of person that I was around 5 or 10 years ago, which says a lot about me because the main character is a mess and she doesn't always make the right choices, but I think a lot of people go through that in their 20s. So yeah, that's ultimately why I gave this 5 stars, and I'm very excited to read more books by this author. I actually have plans to read one of her books next month. Not next month, this month. Very excited to read more books by Laura Kay because I just really enjoyed this book. Next question is new favourite author, either debut or new to you. So the author that I've chosen for this question technically isn't a debut author and they aren't new to me because I have read another of their books, but I consider a favourite author someone who I've read more than one book from. So the author that I wanted to shout out for this question is Erin Kelly, who wrote Watch Her Fall, and then the book of hers that I read this year was The Skeleton Key. I don't think everyone would like this because it's a little too long and it's more of a family drama rather than a thriller, but I also really liked the mystery. So this is basically about this main character called Nell, whose father wrote this book. Her father is also an artist, so I think he actually drew this picture book that was out in like the 1970s or 80s. And I should have said, actually, this book is based on a real book that was also about in the 1970s. So this book had these illustrations, and within the illustrations were these puzzles that people could solve, and it would take them to real places around England where they could find real treasure. Our main character Nell has never liked this book and the attention that it's brought to her family, for good reason. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but you learn quite quickly that she has valid reasons for not liking this book. And in the present day, Nell is now, I think, in her late 30s or early 40s, and there's this reunion that's happening, like a family reunion, where they're also announcing an anniversary edition of this famous book. And there's a mystery, which I did really like, and family secrets that come to light. I just was there for the drama. I also really just liked the atmosphere, and that's ultimately why I gave it 5 stars, even though I think it was a little bit too long. Didn't see some of the twists coming though, which is something that I always appreciate in a mystery. Next question is, who is your newest fictional crush? And the only answer I could think of for this is a character who appears in The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty, and I'm not gonna say who it is, but if you've read this book, 3 guesses who I'm talking about. Next question is newest favourite fictional character. Sticking with The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi, I also really loved Amina. I thought she was a really complex character to follow, and I just loved this book. I thought it was really fun, and I can't wait to read more books in this series. I think this is going to be a trilogy, but this was just a fun pirate adventure, and I love reading about older female main characters in fantasy. And you're gonna notice that trend with the second answer that I wanted to give for this question, because another favourite character that I've read so far this year is Misaki from The Sword of Kaigan. So I just loved this book in general. This is going to be one of my favourite books of the year. It's a standalone fantasy. Misaki is one of the perspectives that you follow, and I just loved her character development and the emotions that I went through while reading this book. This is another book that made me sob, and as I've already said, if a book can draw that emotion out of me, then it is going to be a favourite. Next question is a book that made you cry. Already mentioned The Sword of Kaigan, Fool's Errand, and The Travelling Cat Chronicles, but I wanted to mention them again because these 3 books emotionally devastated me, and I'm still not over it. Next question is a book that made you happy. Surprisingly, Happy Place by Emily Henry made me really happy. I really enjoyed reading this, even though it was quite sad at times. I really loved the portrayal of friendship in this and how it felt very realistic. So this follows a main character called Harriet, who has recently separated from her boyfriend, who was actually her fiance. They split up around 6 months ago, I think, and Harriet arrives on this vacation that she's going on with their friends, and originally this guy Wynne wasn't meant to go on this vacation. However, her friend called him and begged him to come. So Harriet arrives at this lovely beach house to find that she's stuck there with her ex-fiance and all of their friends who don't know that they've broken up yet. So it's fake dating, but also a second chance romance. And I don't usually like second chance romances, but Emily Henry, oh my goodness, Emily Henry made me feel invested in this couple, and the characters just felt like real people. A few months ago, I also read Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert, which I also really liked. This put a big smile on my face. I listened to the audiobook and I thought the narrators did a really good job of making the characters feel realistic, and the banter between them was just exactly what you'd expect from Talia Hibbert. So I'm really glad that I picked this up, even though I don't usually read YA contemporary romances, but this was really fun. Next question is the most beautiful book you've bought this year. I think this award needs to go to Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb, which I'm hoping you can see that. I'll hold it up a little closer so you can see the detail on the cover, but it also has these beautiful stenciled edges. This is the Goldsboro edition that I got in the Sci-Fi Fantasy subscription, and oh, I almost forgot, it also has gold foiling on the naked hardcover, which again I just think is beautiful. I read this book quite recently and really enjoyed it. I gave it like a 4.5 stars. It was a little confusing in the beginning because there's a lot of info dumping, but I really liked the world and it felt really unique, which I always look for in fantasy. The final question is, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? You can tell I've been talking for a while because my throat's starting to get a little bit croaky, but I want to read more books from my Kindle in the second half of the year. I've been doing this vlog series on my channel where I try and read through backlist books from my Kindle to reduce my digital TBR, and it's been going well so far, so I want to try and continue that into the second half of the year. And then there's also a few physical books that I'd like to try and get round to. So a series that I'd like to try and get into this year is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. So whenever I've heard people talking about this series, they describe it as being very unique, which intrigues me. And also I believe this follows an older female main character, which we've established is something that I really enjoy. And I think it also has elemental magic, which again I really like. So I'm hoping to read this within the next few months. Another book that I would like to try and get around to, and I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but I would like to read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, only because I realised recently that I only have one more book I need to read from the 5-star predictions list that I made like 2 years ago, and that's The Name of the Wind. So even though this isn't a completed series and it doesn't look like it's going to be completed anytime soon, I figured I could read the first book, and then if I ever reread it, I can just listen to the audiobook, because I've heard the audiobook is pretty good. I also recently read The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, and it's made me very excited to pick up A Day of Fallen Night, which I should have used actually for the earlier question about a new release I haven't read yet that I want to, but I really want to read A Day of Fallen Night because I loved the world in The Priory of the Orange Tree and I want to read more in that world. I was really disappointed actually. Like, I loved it, but I hated the pacing, and I am excited that there's now a prequel that's set in the same world, but I believe it's set like a few hundred or even 1,000 years before The Priory of the Orange Tree. I think I'm remembering that right. I think that brings me to the end of this video. I'm gonna double check the questions because the last 2 years that I've filmed this tag, I've got to the end and realised that I've missed out like 2 questions. So I'm just gonna go through them quickly now. Yeah, I think those are all the questions. So I'm gonna wrap things up here. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments, what's your favourite book that you've read so far this year? Or let me know your answers to any of these questions, and if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye!